Deep beneath gentle rolling hills and ancient forests, hidden far from any sunlight, a silent stronghold lies waiting in the darkness. Empty stone corridors stretch out like the spokes of a wheel, their once proud walls now draped in wisps of cobweb and shadow. An occasional drip of water echoes softly through the vast halls, a slow and steady rhythm in the quiet gloom. Dust motes dance in a stray beam of light filtering from a crack above, illuminating the edges of doorways and the tattered pages of books that still rest on shelves. In this subterranean labyrinth, time itself seems to have slowed to a crawl. All is still, all is hushed, yet every carved stone and every forgotten room whispers of a story of an ancient people and their greatest creation, now lost to time. There is a faint sense of presence here, as if the ghosts of its builders linger in the silence. If you listen closely, you might almost hear the distant turning of pages in the library, or the faint clink of armor from deep within the stronghold's keep. These are the echoes of a bygone era, resonating softly in the present. To uncover the tale of this mysterious stronghold, we must journey far back into an age when the world was young and the nights were darker than they are now. In those ancient days, long before any adventurer ever set foot in this land, before villagers built their small towns of wood and stone, before zombies roamed the night, even before the memory of the first creeper's hiss, there lived a civilization of unparalleled wisdom and skill. They were a people whose name has long since been lost to the void of history. Today we simply call them the ancient builders, for build they did, cities and monuments the likes of which the overworld has never seen since. They were far more advanced than any who came after, gifted with knowledge and creativity beyond measure. In their time, they tamed the very fabric of the world to their will. They mined deep into the earth and raised towers that scraped the sky. They cultivated fields and bred animals, forging a prosperous society under the sun by day and the stars by night. Imagine, for example, a bustling capital city of the ancient builders at the height of their glory. Broad avenues paved with smooth stone stretch between towering structures of carved quartz and marble. At the city's heart stands a grand library with gleaming stained glass windows depicting scenes of creation and discovery. Scholars in flowing robes wander its steps, discussing theories of magic and science under their breath. Nearby, an open-air marketplace hums with activity. Redstone-powered lamps cast a warm glow over stalls where exotic goods are traded, glistening ores, alchemical reagents, and enchanted tools. Farmers from the surrounding countryside arrive with carts full of wheat, carrots, and potatoes, their horses clip-clopping over well-maintained roads. Children chase each other around a fountain adorned with a stone dragon that spews water, a playful nod to the very creature that inspires their legends. As twilight falls, golems of iron patrol the city gates, gentle guardians ensuring that the streets remain safe. From high atop a spire, a bell chimes the hour, and the people pause to appreciate the sunset painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. In this moment of peace and prosperity, one could sense the confidence and curiosity that permeated their culture. This was a civilization at its zenith, unafraid of the dark, masterful in their craft, and endlessly inquisitive about the world around them. These ancient builders constructed huge libraries filled from floor to ceiling with books, containing the sum of their knowledge and discoveries. By candlelight and quill, they recorded histories, mapped the stars, and penned delicate notes on magical incantations. Through tireless study, they unlocked secrets of the world that now seem like sorcery. It is said they learned to harness the power of enchanting, imbuing tools and weapons with extraordinary properties. They brewed potent potions from the herbs of the earth and the fungi of the nether, granting boons of swiftness or healing with shimmering elixirs. They even devised constructs we might call spawners, strange cages of metal and crystal, capable of summoning creatures seemingly from thin air. Such technology would astonish even the greatest minds of the present age. Redstone, the lifeblood of machinery, flowed through their cities like water through a canal. The builders learned to channel its energy into lights, gates, and automations. By the glow of redstone torches, doors opened at a touch, Secret passages slid apart and entire rooms would shift and change. To later generations, these feats might seem like magic, but to the ancients, they were a part of daily life, a life of innovation and discovery. And they built. Oh, how they built. Their cities spanned entire regions, great metropolises of stone and brick that could fill a vast plain or wrap around mountainsides. Some rose so high that their spires were said to brush the clouds. Others delved so deep that their foundations nearly touched the void at the world's bottom. Grand temples of quartz and marble, fortified citadels bristling with towers, and bridges of glass arching over rivers. All these and more sprang from the hands of the ancient people. Every structure was a testament to their ingenuity and ambition. Yet for all their knowledge and power, the ancient builders were not without belief in forces greater than themselves. Among their many pursuits, they held a deep and abiding faith that there were realms and beings beyond the tangible world they knew. In particular, whispers passed down through generations spoke of a great dragon, a creature of immense power and wisdom that dwelled not in the overworld or the nether, but somewhere far beyond the stars. To these people, the dragon was more than myth. It was a mystery to unravel, perhaps even a deity to revere, or a destiny to embrace. Many a night, elders and youth alike would gaze at the twinkling heavens and wonder which star might be the glint of the dragon's eye watching them from the cosmic darkness. This belief in the dragon that awaited somewhere in space, as their legends described, grew in the hearts of the ancient builders. It inspired songs and stories, paintings on library walls, and hushed prayers uttered at temple altars. Some, among them, dreamed of seeing this dragon with their own eyes, of finding the realm where it resided, be it a distant land across the sea, or a hidden dimension accessible only through arcane means. It was, in a sense, their Tower of Babel, the ultimate quest that could crown their legacy with enlightenment or shatter it entirely. For most, these musings on the dragon remained a spiritual matter, a source of comfort or curiosity as they went about their lives, but for a few it became an obsession. As the civilization reached the height of its golden age, a cadre of the wisest scholars, boldest explorers, and visionary leaders came together, driven by a common goal. They formed a secretive fellowship dedicated to uncovering the truth of the mythical dragon and the world that might lie beyond their own. In time, this fellowship would bend all the might and knowledge of their people toward one singular, ambitious project, a project that would birth the very strongholds whose ruins now lie silent beneath the earth. The story of the strongholds truly begins with this fellowship of dragon seekers. At first, they were a small, curious guild meeting in candlelit corners of the great libraries, poring over ancient scrolls and star charts. They eventually called themselves the Order of the Ender Eye, for they believed an end to their searching lay in sight, and the symbol of an eye represented the vision to seek the unknown. The name also whispered of the end of one journey and the beginning of another, a fitting metaphor for what they intended. Over time, the Order of the Ender Eye grew in influence and number, quietly recruiting the brightest minds and bravest souls in the land. What they sought was nothing less than a way to reach the domain of the legendary dragon. If such a being truly existed beyond the stars or in some hidden dimension, these scholars and adventurers were determined to find it. They debated and experimented late into the night, their laboratories and observatories humming with activity. Some studied the properties of obsidian and enchanted crystals, suspecting that portals to other realms could be constructed with the right materials and magic. Others consulted with the wisest clerics about the nature of souls and the heavens, while a few ventured into perilous territories, rumored to hold otherworldly secrets. It was not long before the Order's quest led them to explore realms beyond, the overworld. Through their experiments, they rediscovered a pathway into a realm of fire and brimstone, a dimension known to us now as the Nether. This hellish world of endless cavernous night, flowing lava, and infernal creatures was not the dragon's lair they sought, but it provided both knowledge and resources. Undaunted, the Order's explorers braved this underworld. They constructed dark portals of obsidian and stepped through into the sweltering abyss beyond. Deep in that crimson-hued darkness, they crossed basalt ledges overlooking seas of magma, and discovered the remnants of a strange fortress. Its halls were patrolled by withered skeletal knights, and ghastly phantom cries echoed in the distance. Yet at the fortress's core burned the prize they sought. In the nether's oppressive heat, they found creatures called blazes, floating beings of flame-guarding, crumbling nether fortresses. From these fiery guardians, they harvested blaze rods, which, when ground into powder, proved to be a key reagent in many alchemical recipes and mystical experiments. The blaze powder glowed with an inner heat and magical potential that the scholars believed could fuel gateways between worlds. Meanwhile, in the overworld, strange occurrences captured the attention of the Order. From time to time, rare shimmering pearls were found in remote places, smooth, round gems with swirling galaxies of purple and black within them. Some were discovered by hunters in the wilderness, pried from the remains of bizarre teleporting creatures that occasionally appeared at night, creatures that would later be known as Endermen. Others were sometimes glimpsed streaking across the night sky during meteor showers, only to be found smoldering in craters, as if they had fallen from the heavens themselves. These were the Ender Pearls, though the ancients did not yet fully understand their purpose. To the Order of the Ender Eye, however, they were clearly important, perhaps even gifts from the distant realm they sought. The Order gathered up these pearls wherever they could find them, trading with distant lands and other tribes for any rumored sky gems, offering knowledge or service in exchange. They studied the pearls intensely, cutting some open with diamond blades and examining the curious void-like substance inside. The pearls had the power to vanish from one spot and appear in another when thrown, a power that intrigued the builders greatly. It was as if each pearl carried a piece of the other world within it, bending space in a way they had never seen. They hypothesized that if one could harness and perhaps stabilize this teleportation effect, it might be the key to bridging the gap to the dragon's world. For years, the Order of the Ender Eye toiled in secrecy. They combined their rare ender pearls with the fiery blaze powder from the nether, following hints from old manuscripts and their own experiments. The result was a new creation, something they called the Eye of Ender. These eyes were marvelous and strange, fashioned by alchemy and magic. Each looked like a pearl that had awakened, with a pupil that glimmered and watched as if alive. When held in hand, an Eye of Ender felt warm and seemed to tug gently in a particular direction, especially when brought near concentrations of magical energy. The Order's members found that if tossed into the air with intent, an eye would levitate and drift inexorably towards some unseen point before falling back to earth, as if trying to guide its holder somewhere. It was an unsettling yet fascinating discovery. The eyes of Ender yearned for something. They had become compass-like beacons attuned to a power that the Order believed could only be the very portal they sought to create, or perhaps the distant home of the dragon calling to them. With these eyes of Ender in their possession, the ancient builders took the next great step in their quest. Drawing upon the collective knowledge of their people, the enchantments, the engineering, the magic, they set out to build a gateway. Not just a simple doorway or a modest portal like the one to the nether. This would be a grand threshold, a ring of stones unlike anything constructed before, meant to tear the fabric of reality and lead to the domain of the dragon. They labored in utmost secrecy, choosing a location far from their surface cities, where few would think to look. In a remote region beneath layers of rock and soil, they began carving out a vast complex to house their experiment. This subterranean complex would eventually become the first stronghold, though at the time it was simply known as the Sanctum, a safe place to carry out dangerous work, away from prying eyes and potential catastrophe. Imagine the scene deep, underground as it might have been. An enormous chamber lit by the flicker of torches and the glow of lava coursing through carefully made channels, casting dancing shadows on the stone brick walls. In the center, a platform of ornate stone bricks is constructed in a ring, 12 empty sockets carved into its rim. Hooded scholars and engineers surround the platform, their faces tense with anticipation and illuminated by the eerie purple light of the eyes of Ender they hold. At the edges of the chamber, dense shelves of books and notes stand by containing all their research. Some last-minute adjustments are made to inscriptions on the stone ring, runes of power painstakingly chiseled in, silver inlay filled with glowing liquid potion to trace the patterns. This was the culmination of all their effort, a device that would track down the dragon's home and allow them safe travel, as their leader declared. When the Stronghold's central device was finally complete, it resembled a monumental well or pool, though empty. The Order had forged the portal frame from dark, resilient stone mined from the deepest caves and infused it with obsidian and quartz. The 12 receptacles around its edge glinted expectantly, each one awaiting an Eye of Ender to activate it. The theory was elegant yet daring. By placing an Eye of Ender into each socket, the collective power of all 12, arranged just so, would tear open a doorway to the world where the dragon resides. It was akin to completing a cosmic circuit. The eyes would align with their distant source and create a bridge through the very fabric of space. The day of the portal's first activation arrived at last. The strongest of their warriors, the Oidundi, wisest of their scholars, and the most devout of their priests gathered in the portal chamber of the Stronghold, prepared to step into the unknown. They had chosen a small group for the initial journey, 3 individuals who represented the strengths of their civilization. One was a brave knight, clad in iron armor inscribed with protective enchantments, a volunteer who had sworn to guard the expedition. Another was a learned scholar, a master of arcane arts who had been instrumental in constructing the portal's magic. This scholar would be the guide, interpreting the mysteries they found on the other side. The third was a priest, a humble servant of the people's faith, chosen for his wisdom and spiritual resolve. He carried with him the hopes and prayers of all who believed in the dragon's benevolence. With heavy duty and honor, these 3 stepped to the edge of the inert portal frame, ready to leap into legend. On the chamber's periphery, a crowd of other members of the Order stood by in support, hearts pounding with a mix of excitement and fear. The air was thick with the scent of hot stone and a peculiar ozone-like tang of magic. At a signal, 12 Eyes of Ender were brought forth, each gently glowing and seeming to pulse like a living thing. One by one, the engineers placed the eyes into the stone sockets. With each eye inserted, the ground trembled ever so slightly and a low hum resonated through the Stronghold's foundations. The inscriptions on the portal frame ignited in sequence, lines of light connecting the eyes forming a ring of luminescence. As the final Eye of Ender clicked into place, a sudden flash of blinding light filled the chamber. Those watching shielded their eyes, and a few gasps echoed as the very center of the ring, the space enclosed by the portal frame, seemed to vanish. In its place swirled an impossibly deep, star-flecked darkness, like a window into the void of night. The portal had opened. A gentle, eerie breeze emanated from it, carrying unfamiliar, otherworldly sounds. Distant, echoing chimes and a faint rumble, as though the portal was a conch shell held to the ear of the universe. The way was now set. The knight was first to step forward, steel sword in hand and shield strapped to his back. Without hesitation, he leapt into the dark abyss of the portal and disappeared without a sound. The scholar followed close behind, clutching a notebook and a satchel of instruments, walking into the shimmering darkness with determined resolve. The priest paused momentarily at the brink, murmuring a final prayer for guidance. The watchers held their breath as he too stepped through and was gone, leaving only the soft hum of the active portal behind. On the other side of that portal, a completely alien world awaited these pioneers. At the moment they passed through, they felt a sensation of weightlessness, as if falling and flying at once, and then found solid ground beneath their feet again. When their eyes adjusted, they beheld a barren and haunting landscape. They stood on an island of pale greenish stone, a type unlike any found in the overworld. The sky above was not blue or even the fiery red of the nether, but a black abyss speckled with faint stars, stretching in every direction, even below the horizon, as if this world were an endless void with islands suspended within it. It was disorienting and awe-inspiring in equal measure. Jagged obsidian pillars rose up from the ground around them, reaching high into the darkness. Each towering column was crowned with a strange crystal that glowed and crackled with energy. emitting an occasional beam of purple light into the sky. The landscape was silent but for a low ambient hum and the crunch of their boots on the brittle ground. Clusters of strange plant-like growths dotted the terrain, twisted brittle stalks with bulbous tips that glowed faintly. These would later be known as chorus plants, though the explorers had no name for them yet. The air was still, heavy with an uncanny quiet. In the distance, under the dim starlight of that realm, the three travelers could see the silhouette of something enormous moving slowly across the sky. Their hearts quickened. It was the being they had hoped and feared to find. The great ender dragon itself came into view, its black form cutting through the air with outstretched wings, every stroke a slow ripple in the darkness. The dragon's eyes gleamed like twin beacons of violet as it circled one of the far obsidian pillars. Each time it passed an outcrop of the strange chorus vegetation, the plants would quiver as if bowing to their sovereign. The knight tightened. His grip on his sword, the scholar scribbled furiously in his notebook, recording every detail of this unbelievable sight. The first humans ever to witness a living dragon. The priest held his breath, both in reverence and fear, clutching a symbol of the dragon that he wore around his neck, a token of faith now confronted with reality. They did not know whether the dragon had noticed them on that remote stretch of the Ends Island, but they knew their presence in this realm could not remain unnoticed forever. For a time, the trio advanced carefully, exploring the immediate area where they had arrived. They found that around them were scattered chunks of what looked like ancient stone ruins, possibly remnants of structures, though none in their records had spoken of reaching this place before. The scholar examined the strange greenish endstone of the ground, noting its surprising hardness and faint luminescence. The priest whispered a benediction under his breath, feeling a chill, a sense that this place was sacred in its own perilous way. It did not take long for their arrival to draw attention. As the three ventured farther from the portal, heading toward one of the towering pillars to better observe the crystals, the dragon let out a distant, resonant roar that vibrated through the void. It was a sound like thunder mixed with a deep chime, powerful enough to rattle their bones. The dragon had seen them. In that instant, each of the three felt a primal fear, but also awe. The very thing they had sought was now looking back at them with ancient, unreadable eyes. The knight, ever courageous, motioned for his companions to retreat toward the portal, not wishing to engage such a beast without a plan. They began to back away, but curiosity held them for a moment longer as they watched the dragon. It glided to a nearby obsidian pillar and alighted upon it, coiling its long tail around the column. From its maw came a burst of crackling energy, a sphere of dragon's breath that burst into a lingering mist above the stone. To their alarm, the crystal atop the pillar shone brighter, and the wounds on the dragon's midnight scales, scratches from ages of existence, or perhaps battles unknown, seemed to knit themselves closed, healed by some power linked between the crystals and the dragon. This creature, it seemed, was intimately tied to the strange artifacts on the pillars. It could draw strength from them. Realizing the potential danger and the impossibility of confronting a being that could apparently regenerate, the explorers decided it was wiser to return with their initial observations than to press their luck further. They slowly continued back toward the portal, which thankfully remained open behind them as a swirling oval of darkness hovering above the ground. But the end was not keen on letting them leave unchallenged, as they distanced themselves from the dragon. Something unexpected happened. From behind one of the stone outcroppings emerged a tall, thin figure that none of them had noticed before. It was humanoid in shape, but decidedly not human. Its form was gaunt and elongated, with limbs far too long and slender. Its skin was jet black, absorbing light rather than reflecting it, and where its eyes should have been, there glowed two piercing purple flames of intelligence. The knight thought at first it was some kind of shadow or trick of the light, until it moved, stepping forward with a jerky, unnaturally quick motion. In its hand it clutched a block of something, a cube of the very endstone from the ground, as if it had been carrying it. Startled, the knight signaled the others to halt. The scholar recognized the description from their studies. Could this be an Enderman? A creature matching the accounts of odd teleporting beings in their own world? Indeed, it must be related. Perhaps these beings originated here in this endless night. The Enderman stared at them from a short distance, but did not attack. It was eerily silent. Only the faint crackle of energy around it could be heard, like static in the air. The priest, careful not to meet the creature's direct gaze, for the tales warned of angering an Enderman with eye contact, held out a gentle hand in a gesture of peace. For a brief moment, man and Enderman regarded one another curiously in the shadow of that alien landscape. Then, a distant rush of air and another unearthly roar reminded them that the dragon was still watching. The creature had taken flight and was now moving in their direction, perhaps enraged by intruders in its domain or simply territorial. The Enderman near them suddenly vanished in a puff of particles, teleporting away, whether in fear of the dragon or by some natural reflex. To its roar, the humans could not tell. Sensing that their time was up, the three explorers made a run for the portal. The knight went last, shielding the rear as the dragon closed in. Just as the scholar and priest leapt into the dark gateway, the dragon swooped low and unleashed a searing spray of its breath, a corrosive, shimmering acid mist that spread across the stone ground. The knight raised his shield, but some of the dragon's breath engulfed him. He staggered forward and managed, with a final effort, to dive through the portal, coughing as the venomous fumes clung to him. In the next heartbeat, the portal's connection ruptured. Perhaps the dragon struck the frame, or perhaps the magic had a limited duration. With a thunderous clap and a flash, the gateway collapsed, sealing itself shut behind the fleeing trio. Back in the stronghold chamber, the members of the Order of the Ender Eye were thrown into chaos as the portal suddenly exploded outward with force, knocking several people off their feet and plunging the room into darkness as the glowing eyes around the frame abruptly dimmed. Sparks flew and a gust of otherworldly wind rushed through the corridors. The portal frame remained intact, but the eyes of Ender had all shattered into inert fragments of glass and pearl, spent from the violent closure. Silence followed, broken only by the groans of the engineers and scholars regaining their footing. Their carefully planned expedition had clearly encountered peril on the other side. For a long moment, nothing happened. The portal's dark surface rippled quietly, giving no clue as to the fate of the trio beyond. The assembled builders stood in tense silence, unwilling to close the portal but fearing the worst. Each passing second felt heavy with hope and dread, until finally, the quiet was broken. Moments later, to everyone's relief and astonishment, two figures emerged from the smoke at the center of the portal frame. The scholar and the priest, coughing and trembling, but alive. They had made it back. They were quickly helped down from the portal platform by the onlookers. The priest's robe was singed and the scholar's notebook nearly falling apart, but they were here. Of the night, there was no immediate sign, until a shout came from behind the crowd. He had appeared in another part of the stronghold's portal room, thrown there by the collapsing magic. The knight was found collapsed against a wall, his armor corroded in patches by the dragons, breath and his body unresponsive. Brave hands pulled him away from the frame and laid him on the floor. It was clear to all that he had suffered grievously. His breathing was shallow and labored, and his face, where exposed, was pale as ash. The healers in the order rushed to administer what remedies they could, carrying him away on a stretcher. The chamber that had moments ago been filled with triumph now brimmed with a mixture of panic, sorrow, and awe. They had opened the door to the dragon's realm, yes, but at a cost. 2 out of the 3 had returned, one in dire condition, and they brought with them tales almost too fantastic to believe. As healers worked on the knight in an adjacent room, the scholar and priest were given water and a moment to collect themselves before recounting what they witnessed. Surrounded by an anxious circle of fellow builders in the flickering torchlight, the scholar described the end. The endless void, dotted with floating islands of pale stone, the tall obsidian pillars topped with strange crystals, and the majestic, terrifying form of the Ender Dragon gliding through the void. He spoke of the Endermen they saw, confirming that the teleporting creatures that occasionally appeared in their own world indeed came from this strange dimension. The priest, clutching his symbol of faith, added his perspective. To him, the dragon was both wondrous and fearsome, and the realm felt as if it were the threshold of eternity, a place caught between life and death, where the dragon watched over the end of all things. As they recounted the confrontation with the dragon, a hush fell. Many in the order realized the gravity of what they had done. They had intruded upon the sanctuary of a being nearly godlike in power. They had gained invaluable knowledge, yes, but they had also provoked the guardian of that other world. The reality that one of their own, the valiant knight now hovered on the brink of death, was a sobering testament to the dangers of this mission. The order tended to their injured and mourned the likely loss of the knight, who had not yet regained consciousness. They secured the stronghold, ensuring the portal frame was dormant. Over the next days, the knight's condition worsened despite the healer's best efforts. The dragon's breath had a potent, lingering effect. His wounds were not ordinary burns or poison, but something more insidious, almost magical. His skin, where the mist had touched, turned a strange ashen gray and seemed to harden in patches. He drifted in and out of fevered dreams, speaking incoherently of darkness and whispers. The priest, who had been closest to the knight, refused to leave his side, praying and applying salves concocted from the rare herbs they had. Yet nothing seemed to purge the dragon's venom from the knight's body. The builder's proud form was wasting away, and an uneasy feeling settled on the caretakers. This was no ordinary malady. Meanwhile, the leaders of the civilization, the kings, elders, and master builders who were not directly part of the order but held authority, were informed of what transpired. The secret was now spilling beyond the fellowship. Reactions were mixed. Some were furious that such a perilous venture had been conducted in secret, potentially endangering everyone. Others were fascinated by the discovery of the End Realm and the existence of the dragon, seeing both great danger and great opportunity. That very evening, a council of the realm convened in a great stone hall above the stronghold. By the light of hanging lanterns, voices echoed as the leaders of the builders argued over the next course of action. An elderly magistrate, his hands trembling with rage, demanded that the portal be destroyed at once and the dragon appeased with prayers, fearing that they had angered a deity. A battle-scarred general slammed his fist on the table, declaring that this new threat must be met with force. Perhaps a larger expedition, armed with their finest weapons, could slay the dragon if it dared to invade. Across from them, a famed scholar, the very one who had traveled through the portal, spoke in a measured tone about the vast knowledge they had gained and cautioned against hasty decisions. He reminded the council that the portal was now their only link to understanding the End Realm and the dragon, and that they should study the situation further before acting. The priest who survived the journey stood quietly by, clutching a dragon-emblazoned amulet, and implored everyone to consider the spiritual ramifications of what they had seen. Passion flared on all sides, but one by one the voices fell silent. When the High Chancellor of the Builders raised her hand for order, in a solemn voice she acknowledged the gravity of their discovery, a world beyond their own, and a powerful being guarding it, and declared that above all, the safety of their people must come first. The council agreed on a cautious plan: secure the stronghold, tend to the wounded, and observe the portal carefully while they deliberated further. Little did they know, events were already in motion that would force their hand much sooner than anticipated. Unbeknownst to the council, an ominous change was taking place in the infirmary deep in the stronghold. The knight who had returned, once a picture of strength, had become pallid and gaunt. Late one night, the priest attending him noticed something chilling. The knight's eyes, once brown and warm with life, were now clouded with a faint purple glow. He would stare blankly at the ceiling, muttering in an unknown tongue as delirium took him. His voice sounded hollow and strange, echoing unnaturally off the stone walls. The infection, if that was what it was, seemed to be not just physical but also spiritual, altering the very essence of the man. On the third night after their return, the knight's condition reached a crisis. He let out a scream, a piercing, inhuman screech that rang throughout the stronghold corridors, waking even those in distant chambers. The priest and several healers rushed to restrain him as his body convulsed. Before their horrified eyes, the knight's limbs began to stretch and jerk as if pulled by invisible strings. His skin, gray and mottled, darkened further to a charcoal black. He rose from the bed with unnatural strength, tossing aside those who sought to hold him down. In the torchlight, the transformation that took shape was the stuff of nightmares. The once human knight towering taller than before, his arms lengthening, fingers curling into claws. The purple light in his eyes intensified into two burning points. The healers and the priests stumbled back in fear and shock. Their dear friend was becoming something unrecognizable, something otherworldly. In a guttural voice that echoed, with layers, as if many voices spoke through him from a great distance, the night-turned creature let out a furious growl. One of the healers, in a desperate bid, shouted the knight's name, trying to reach whatever part of him might remain. But there was no indication of recognition. The creature lunged at them, moving with a blinding speed. Those present later recounted that it was as though a shadow had come alive and attacked. In the struggle, a lantern was knocked over and the room fell into darkness save for the creature's glowing eyes. Panicked cries and the sound of scuffling feet echoed through the halls. Finally, the priest with trembling hands managed to open the heavy door of the infirmary, calling for help. The creature, what had once been their brave knight, took that moment to escape. It pushed past the priest, knocking him to the ground and bounded down the stone corridor with unnaturally long strides. In seconds, it vanished into the dark maze of the stronghold. Those who saw it could barely comprehend it. The knight had become something akin to an Enderman, tall, dark, and hatefully swift. But unlike a typical Enderman, which might have simply teleported away, this being was aggressive and feral, a living nightmare born from the dragon's corruption. Alarms were raised throughout the stronghold and the nearby city on the surface. Guardians with swords and bows descended into the tunnels to hunt the creature. Torchlight flickered on the walls as teams of builders searched the endless halls, their own shadows trembling with each flicker, hearts pounding with dread. Occasionally, a faint scrabble of claws on stone or a distant unearthly moan would send them running in pursuit, only to find emptiness around the next corner. For a tense night and day, the transformed knight stalked the depths of the stronghold. People whispered that this was a curse brought back from the end, a punishment from the dragon for trespassing. Every so often, someone would catch a glimpse of the figure, always at the edge of their vision in a dark hallway before it slipped silently away. At one point, two guards swore they saw not one but several sets of glowing eyes in the dark, watching them from an intersecting tunnel. Could it be their minds playing tricks? Or were there now multiple creatures loose in the stronghold? The fear was palpable. Their worst fears were soon confirmed. The creature that had been the knight was not merely hiding, it was hunting, and it was not alone. One by one, a handful of stronghold inhabitants, healers, scholars, guards, who had gone missing during the frantic chase reappeared as monstrosities themselves. The very infection or curse that had changed the knight had now spread to others, presumably through scratches or bites inflicted in the darkness. Each new creature bore the same gaunt frame and burning purple eyes, some still wearing the tattered remnants of their clothes or armor, a horrifying reminder of who they once were. The stronghold, which had been a place of learning and hope, descended into a nightmare almost overnight. Reports of these ghouls, as some of the Order started calling them, began to come from the surface as well. In the dead of night, townsfolk in the outskirts saw tall, shadowy figures moving through fields or heard unnatural noises outside their homes. A farmer's family vanished from their farmhouse, the building found empty with doors smashed off, their hinges. For all the civilization's power, it couldn't halt these mutant demons. Soon, city streets were not safe after sundown. The creatures, which indeed resembled Endermen but seemed more ravenous and hostile than the occasionally passive Endermen that had been observed before, were now appearing throughout the land, attacking anyone they encountered. They were driven by an inexplicable fury, as if the humanity that once resided in them had been replaced entirely by darkness and anger. The proud civilization of the ancient builders had unwittingly unleashed a terror upon themselves. In those fearful days, the ancient builders began to understand that their overreaching ambition had come at a terrible price. All their wisdom and power was now bent not toward progress, but toward a desperate fight for survival against a foe of their own making. The very portal built to seek enlightenment had instead brought calamity. Many now cursed the Order of the Ender Eye for delving into matters perhaps best left alone. Others rallied behind them, determined to find a way to reverse what had happened. The most urgent question was, how could they stop the spread of these Ender creatures? For it was clear now that these ghouls were related to the Endermen they had encountered. And could the creatures be cured or reasoned with? Early attempts at capturing them alive proved almost impossible. The monsters could vanish and reappear at will, evading traps with ease, and their strength was far beyond that of an ordinary human. In combat, they shrugged off wounds that would fell normal men, unless struck down with overwhelming force or enchanted weapons. In the midst of this chaos, the scholar who had returned from the end, the one survivor aside from the priest, searched frantically through the tomes of the Order for any clue that might help. Through sleepless nights, he pored over volumes of magical theory, ancient prophecies, anything that might hint at what this curse was and how to contain it. The priest, meanwhile, led efforts to protect and calm the populace. He and other volunteers fortified the stronghold entrances and key points in the city and organized evacuation of outlying homes to more secure locations behind stone walls and water moats. For they learned that these creatures, like the Endermen, had a mysterious aversion to water, as contact with it would cause them to hiss and flee. Within a few harrowing weeks, the once vibrant civilization was besieged from within. Many villages were abandoned, and city streets were eerily empty at night, with only the occasional streak of a moving shadow and echo of teleportation to suggest the prowling predators. It was as though an invasion had taken place, but the invaders were their own kin, twisted by an alien influence. Finally, the Order of the Ender Eye, in collaboration with the remaining leaders, devised a desperate plan. They would attempt to force all of these Enderborn monsters, as well as any other stray Endermen that were in the overworld, back into the realm from which they came. If they could reopen the portal, perhaps they could lure or drive the creatures through it, then shut it behind them forever. It was a grim solution, for it meant giving up any immediate dream of contacting the dragon for wisdom or boon. Now, their grand portal would be used as a drain to wash this curse out of their world. However, reopening the portal was not straightforward. The original Eyes of Ender that powered it had been destroyed in the emergency shutdown. They would need to gather or create new ones. Moreover, by now the stronghold was partially overrun. Parts of it had become nests for the creatures during the chaos. The portal chamber itself, deep in the heart of the stronghold, had become difficult to access. There were reports of clutches of the ghoulish Endermen lingering there as if drawn to the very gateway that spawned them. Despite the dangers, small teams of the bravest builders armed with enchanted weapons fought their way into the depths, retaking crucial corridors one torchlit step at a time. The battles in those halls were fierce but quick. The creatures, though lethal, often vanished rather than fight to the death if outnumbered, only to reappear behind their attackers later. Losses were heavy. For every creature cut down, another builder might be taken by an ambush or dragged away. Still, the builders pressed on. All the while, craftsmen and alchemists worked incessantly to create more Eyes of Ender. They had some stock of ender pearls and blaze powder remaining, but each eye crafted was precious and had to be protected. It was a bitter twist of fate that now they sought to use the very tools that once opened the door to that nightmare to close it again. After great struggle, the Order finally secured the portal chamber. Torches were placed all around, and a defensive perimeter was established. In the flickering light, the portal frame still stood, silently waiting as it had since that fateful day. The runes etched into the stone were now dark, and a fine layer of dust covered the platform. Scattered about were signs of the recent skirmishes, scorch marks from magical blasts, toppled stone bricks, even the fading remnants of a creature or two dissipating into nothingness as the strange energies that animated them finally winked out. With solemn determination, the builders began to reactivate the portal. One by one, new Eyes of Ender were slotted into the empty sockets around the frame, much as before. Only this time, the mood was not one of hopeful excitement, but of grave necessity. They knew that as soon as the portal opened, it might attract every remaining cursed creature like moths to a flame. It could become a two-way door with more danger pouring out. But it was a risk they had to take. As expected, the moment the portal sprang to life with that familiar deep darkness and starry expanse, a howl erupted from various corners of the stronghold. It was as if the Ender creatures felt the surge of energy and recognized it. They began, converging towards the portal room with ferocity, sensing perhaps a gateway back to the dragon's realm, or simply the powerful magic that had once transformed them. The builders were ready. They had set up a bottleneck at the portal entrance, and as the creatures charged in, a writhing mass of tall shadows, the defenders threw everything they had at them. Enchanted swords glowed and swung, and bolts of the strongest arrows flew, all while the portal hummed ominously behind. Some of the creatures, reckless or eager, jumped directly into the portal as soon as they reached the room, vanishing back into the void beyond. Others engaged the defenders in brutal combat. The chamber rang with the sounds of clashing metal, hissing breaths, and the shouts of warriors. The priest from the expedition stood among them, fighting side by side with a resolve fueled by guilt and hope. One by one, they pushed the intruders toward the portal. For a moment, it looked as though the builders might succeed in driving out the plague entirely. Fewer and fewer of the cursed remained in the overworld, either cut down or forced through the swirling gateway. But fate was not done testing the ancient civilization. From deeper in the shadows of the stronghold came a sound that made even the bravest freeze, a chorus of angry, warped snarls and the heavy thumping of something massive approaching. To their horror, the builders realized that not only the mutated humans had answered the portal's call, but true Endermen from the end had as well, likely drawn through when the portal reopened or finding their way now that the boundary was porous. Moreover, something much larger was forcing its way toward the portal chamber through the corridors, something that shook the very foundations with each step. The stronghold's stonework began to crack as if under great pressure. Dust rained from the ceiling. Builders staggered, looking around in confusion and fear. Could the dragon itself be coming through? That seemed impossible. The portal was not large enough for its bulk, was it? But perhaps some other horror of the end was at hand. Suddenly, bursting into the portal chamber like a juggernaut, came an Enderman of incredible size, far larger than any they had seen before, as if a dozen of its kind had merged into one. Its form barely fit through the arched doorways, scraping and breaking the stone as it moved. This giant Enderman's eyes burned with an intense white-hot glow instead of the usual purple, and it emitted a distorted screech that rattled the teeth of all who heard it. In truth, it may not have been a single being, but a cluster of the cursed ones moving in unnerving unison, appearing as one massive shadow. Either way, the effect was the same, an overwhelming force that the tired builders struggled to hold back. It thrashed wildly, swatting aside armed men as though they were dolls and stomping with enough force to fissure the floor. As chaos erupted anew, the priest, wounded and desperate, realized that their plan teetered on the edge of collapse. If they could not contain this final onslaught, all was lost. With a quick command, he urged the remaining builders to retreat from the portal chamber, to draw the giant and its entourage further in, letting the portal stand open behind them. Many refused to leave entirely, staying at the edges of the room to support with arrows and what spells they had left, but they gave the behemoth a clear path to the portal. Perhaps instinct would do what their swords could not. Indeed, the hulking, Enderman-like entity seemed to sense the open portal behind the line of defenders. In the midst of battle, it suddenly turned its gaze toward the portal's void and let out a yearning, agonized howl. In that sound was a hint of longing, as if the creature, despite its rage, desired to go home. Seizing the moment, one brave builder hurled a spare eye of Ender directly at the giant's feet. The eye, reacting to the proximity of the active portal, burst in a flash of light, momentarily disorienting the creature and those around it. With a furious bellow and swipes of its arms, the giant stumbled backward step by step, until with a final lunge it fell into the open portal, disappearing from sight. The remaining lesser creatures, already on the brink of the portal, were swept with it like debris in a whirlwind. Seeing the chamber clear at last of living threats, The priest cried out to shut the portal. At that moment, the few builders who had remained near the frame each took hold of an eye of Ender still set in its socket. In a practice they had agreed upon beforehand, though none were sure it would work, they simultaneously pried the glowing eyes from their stone sockets, breaking the gateway and halting any further invasion. Normally, once activated, an eye in a frame cannot simply be removed by hand, but with the portal destabilized by the struggle and the burst of energy, the frames were flickering. With great effort, the eyes were wrenched free. Some shattered. In the attempt, others popped out whole. Immediately, the swirling void began to collapse. The dark aperture shrank and then imploded with a deafening crack, knocking everyone in the stronghold off their feet once more. Then there was silence, save for the heavy breathing of the survivors and the crackle of a small fire where a curtain had fallen onto a torch. The portal was closed. The nightmare, it seemed, was over. In the days and weeks that followed, the ancient builders surveyed the aftermath of what would later be known as the Ender Crisis. They found that those monstrous creatures that had plagued them had all vanished, either slain or banished back to the end. Only the natural monsters of the overworld remained, the zombies, skeletons, and spiders that had long troubled the night. But even they seemed almost mundane in comparison to the horrors that had come from the portal. There was an overwhelming sense of both relief and sorrow among the people. Relief that the immediate threat was gone, but deep sorrow for what had been lost. Entire towns had been devastated, families gone, knowledge and treasures destroyed in the chaos. And beyond the physical losses was a kind of spiritual despair. They had reached too far, and the punishment had been severe. The great civilization, while not entirely obliterated, had been mortally wounded. The stronghold which housed the portal, once a site of hope and ambition, was now regarded with fear and dread. Many refused to ever set foot in it again. Some even advocated destroying it entirely, collapsing the tunnels and sealing it forever as a tomb. But the scholars hesitated. Within its libraries were invaluable books, and the portal frame, even without the eyes, was a rare and potent artifact. In the end, they decided to leave the stronghold intact but abandoned. It was too risky to tamper further. Perhaps the portal could reactivate, or other unknown magics could be released. Better to let it lie, hidden and unreachable, its chambers, a silent memorial to the folly and bravery of that age. To ensure no one would inadvertently stumble into that cursed place, the remaining leaders took measures. Maps were altered or destroyed to hide the location of the stronghold. Entrances were collapsed or cleverly obscured. Over time, new structures were built over some of the sealed passageways, or forests were allowed to overgrow the area. Eventually, the stronghold faded from common knowledge. It passed into legend and rumor. People spoke of secret underground cities and gateways to hellish realms, cautionary tales to keep children close to home at night. However, deep in their hearts, the surviving ancients knew that while they had stopped the immediate threat, they had not truly solved the underlying mysteries. The end still existed, and the Ender Dragon still ruled that realm, no doubt alive and well. Endermen continued to appear sporadically in the overworld, fewer than before, but clearly some still remained or found their way across dimensions in their own mysterious manner. Perhaps these were just stray survivors, or even the original, natives of the End, curious about the world of men. Thankfully, without the portal, these Endermen were isolated visitors, not an invading force, and they largely kept to themselves unless provoked by a wanderer's stare. The ancient builders also carried a heavy burden of guilt. In their final act of sealing the portal, they had exiled not only the monstrous contagion but also their own people who had been turned. The Knight, their friend, and the others who were transformed had been cast back into the End along with the rest. There was no way to know what became of them after that. Did they perish in the void, or did they roam the End eternally as lost souls in alien bodies? This question haunted the priest and the scholar especially, as they felt directly responsible for those lives. Some accounts say the priest renounced his worldly titles and became a hermit, wandering the wilds in penance and prayer. The scholar, it is said, took his remaining research and retreated to a far corner of the world, writing a chronicle of the rise and fall of their great endeavor so that future generations might learn from it. That chronicle, perhaps, is the very tale we recount now. As time marched on, the glorious civilization of the ancient builders slowly declined. The toll of the Ender crisis had weakened it profoundly. Populations dwindled, cities were abandoned, and knowledge was lost. The mighty achievements of the past became harder to sustain. The great libraries fell into disuse, their books crumbling away unread. Without enough able hands to maintain them, the automated redstone wonders eventually ground to a halt, plunging once lit streets into darkness. The world grew quieter and less grand. It's thought by some that this decline was not solely due to loss of life and morale, but possibly also due to a lingering curse. Perhaps residues of the dragon's realm had seeped into the land, subtly, eroding the fertility of soil, the health of livestock, or the will of the people. Whatever the causes, the result was clear. The age of the ancient builders was ending. All that remained of their age were scattered remnants and mysteries. The once thriving cities crumbled to dust, but a few outposts and creations of the ancients survived in obscurity. In later eras, people would occasionally stumble upon peculiar structures whose origins were lost to time. A vine-choked stone, temple deep in a jungle, a booby-trapped pyramid rising from desert sands, or an elaborate maze of mine tunnels and railways twisting beneath the earth. Villagers and travelers would scratch their heads at these ruins, crafting local legends to explain them, never truly knowing that each was a fragment of a single great civilization that had passed into myth. Without the full story, these structures were simply enigmatic curiosities, whispers of a world that had been. Some survivors integrated with simpler cultures nearby, perhaps becoming what we know now as villagers. Though villagers bear little resemblance to the ancient humans in appearance or intellect, there could have been a blending over generations, with knowledge giving way to simplicity and survival. In fact, it may be no coincidence that villagers greet modern travelers with calm acceptance and are quick to trade. Perhaps deep in their cultural memory, they remember the ancient builders as allies and trading partners. Others ventured into new dimensions in a bid for refuge. There are those who speculate that some found a way into the Nether and established new lives there, eventually becoming the Piglin tribes known today, though that is a tale for another time. A few steadfast communities hung on in the overworld, holding fast to fragments of old knowledge. These might have been responsible for constructing the occasional odd fortress or safeguarding artifacts in hidden temples. Even so, the strongholds remained the most direct and haunting legacy of that era. In fact, an explorer might accidentally find one by mining in the right or wrong place, one swing of a pickaxe revealing a cavity in carved stone where only solid rock was expected. Or perhaps by following the cryptic guidance of an Eye of Ender. A modern adventurer would notice the eye hovering and then descending into the ground, indicating a stronghold lies below. With excitement and trepidation, they dig downward, and suddenly the dirt falls away to reveal a carved stone brick ceiling mossy with age. Torch in hand, they break through and step inside, becoming likely the first person in countless generations to walk those halls. The stronghold greets them with silence and a gust of stale air. Spider webs hang like ghostly drapes in the corners. The adventurer's light reveals a hallway that splits in multiple directions, like a maze inviting them deeper. Each step echoes. Their own footsteps seem unnaturally loud. At one point, the explorer jumps at a sudden clatter, only to find it was just a loose pebble falling down a staircase disturbed by their presence. In another moment, a fluttering of wings startles them as a lone bat, the silent warden of these halls, darts past their torchlight and vanishes into the dark. The explorer's racing heart slows again, and they press on, reminding themselves that ghosts, if any linger here, are only memories in stone. Perhaps they come across an iron door, still intact, leading into a small cell, a jail complete with rusty bars, hinting that the stronghold once even had its own dungeon for prisoners. In another chamber, wooden shelves hold rotted books, At a touch, a book might crumble to dust, but maybe one or two could be barely legible, telling of enchantments or old recipes. If they peer around carefully, they might even find a dusty chest tucked behind the shelves. Inside lies a trove of minor curios, a bundle of papers so brittle they fall apart at the slightest touch, a rusted key with no lock to match, and an old compass whose needle quivers faintly as if touched by leftover magic. Such artifacts raise more questions than answers, yet to the explorer they are priceless souvenirs of this lost world. As they venture further, they might hear a skittering sound, a tiny scraping noise that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere. The silverfish sense a disturbance. If the explorer isn't careful and steps on a certain hidden trigger or simply lingers too near the portal chamber, they might find the walls suddenly alive with small, insect-like creatures pouring out of cracks. The silverfish attack in swarms, their tiny bites painful and startling. Many an unprepared adventurer has been driven away by these relentless pests, never even glimpsing the heart of the stronghold. But a determined one might press on, sword swinging to keep the swarm at bay or blocking up holes with whatever materials are at hand to slow the tide. Eventually, if they manage to navigate the labyrinth, often with the help of many eyes of Ender to point the general direction, the explorer finds themselves at the portal room. It is an awe-inspiring sight, even in decay. A square chamber with stone brick arches and eerie quiet. The portal frame stands on a raised platform above a pool of lava that still glows with undying heat, casting flickering light on the walls. The frame itself is a ring of 12 carved stone blocks, each engraved with odd runic motifs and inlaid on top with a pattern suggesting an eye. Some of these frame blocks still bear an eye of Ender, glowing faintly, ever watchful, but most are empty dark sockets. And atop one edge of the portal frame, the last guardian remains, a silverfish spawner, a cage of mossy stone and iron bars containing a swirling mass of energy and a few of the wriggling silver creatures, ready to spawn more if disturbed. The adventurer pauses in reverence and caution. To activate the portal, they know they must place Eyes of Ender into all those empty sockets, rekindling the ancient magic. It's a task that requires bravery and preparation, and they likely came, prepared with the necessary eyes, aware from legends and research of what was needed. One by one, they set the precious eyes into the vacant frame blocks. With each one, the frame begins to glow faintly, a low throbbing sound emanating from the ancient stones. When the last eye clicks in, the portal awakens once more. After so, long lying dormant. A deep resonant hum fills the room, and that familiar star-speckled void appears within the frame, inviting yet ominous. Any remaining silverfish writhe and drop into the lava, as if even they fear what comes next. The way to the end, the same path the ancients opened and later sealed, now lies open again for whoever is bold enough to step through. The adventurer steels themselves and steps into the unknown. But that part of the story, what happens when a new soul confronts the Ender Dragon, is perhaps for another night. Some say that the dragon can indeed be defeated by a single, determined hero, succeeding where an ancient nation could not, finally bringing closure to the saga by freeing the End from its ageless guardian. Others suggest that even when the dragon is slain, it is not truly the end, as mysterious gateways appear leading to the outer End Islands, and even an egg is left behind as a promise of the dragon's cycle of rebirth. Out in the remote End Islands far beyond the dragon's lair, these End cities stand as eerie ghost towns. Constructed of a pearlescent purple stone, their towers spiral and twist in alien geometry, connected by narrow walkways and dotted with glowing rods of light. Chorus flowers bloom around their bases, and odd ship-like vessels hover suspended in the void near some city spires. The cities are silent except for the occasional clatter of a strange shell-like creature, the shulker, guarding the empty halls by spitting levitating bolts at any intruder. Treasure lies untouched in their heights, chests of glittering loot, and on those floating ships, the coveted elytra wings that once allowed flight. Who placed these riches or built these edifices is unknown to present storytellers. Some speculate that before the last ancient builders perished or left the End, they and their companions constructed these lofty refuges, using the materials of that strange land to craft homes resembling, in some faint way, the cities they remembered from the overworld. Others argue that Endermen, gradually reclaiming their lost intelligence, assembled the cities to fulfill some instinctual need for structure, copying the designs of the humans they once were. In any event, the End cities now stand empty but for the shuffling of shulkers and the whisper of endless night, monuments to a chapter of the story that even the bravest explorers have only begun to unravel. But whatever the case, those events bridge the old world and the new. For now, let us return our focus to the strongholds themselves, these silent sentinels of history. They stand as monuments to the hubris and hope of the ancient builders. Walking through one is like walking through a graveyard of dreams. Here was where knowledge was hoarded and lives were spent in pursuit of a lofty goal. Here was where people huddled in fear, then found courage, then ultimately met their end. The very stone seemed to sigh with the weight of it. If one listens, truly listens, you could almost imagine hearing the distant quill scratches of a scribe, recording the day's events in the library, or an echoed laugh of a child chasing a pet through the halls long ago, or the solemn chanting of engineers and mages aligning the portal's magic. And sometimes, perhaps on a lonely night when a wanderer camping above a stronghold places an ear to the ground, they might hear a faint rumble or moan from below. Some say that's just the wind in underground caverns, or the shifting of earth, but others wonder if it's the restless spirit of the stronghold itself, or the distant roar of the dragon reverberating through the once open channel between worlds. Consider what it must have been like for the last ancient builder who left, a stronghold sealing the door behind them. They would have looked back at the dark entrance knowing they might be the last of their kind to see it. Perhaps they whispered an apology to those entombed inside, or a prayer that the stronghold would never again be disturbed. Did they imagine that one day, far in the future, their distant descendants or strangers entirely would break in anew, reigniting all that had transpired? In truth, the ancient builders likely hoped that no one would ever reopen the path to the end. They had deemed it too dangerous. The fact that eyes of Ender still function and call to intrepid adventurers suggests that the draw of curiosity and destiny is hard to quench. Eventually, someone would always be tempted to seek the dragon, as indeed someone was. And what of the Ender dragon during all that intervening time? In the End's timeless void, the dragon remained, circling and circling those obsidian pillars, perhaps wondering what became of those intruders it glimpsed so long ago. Did it sense when the portal was sealed? Did it feel a moment of triumph when the connection was severed and the challenge ended? The dragon's thoughts are beyond our understanding, but one can imagine it as an eternal guardian, bound to its cycle, its great glowing eyes ever watchful. The Endermen in that realm might have gleaned something from the ones who returned, perhaps new blocks they carried unwittingly, or new behaviors they observed. But ultimately they too continued their existence as before, picking up blocks, constructing odd formations out of dirt or flowering plants or stone, as if trying to build something remembered in a haze, perhaps imitating the building instincts of their former humanity. Indeed, the tendency of Endermen to move and place blocks has long puzzled many. Some think it's random, but others see in it a ghost of intelligence, a ritual or habit from another life. In our tale's context, it is a poignant remnant of their origin, the ancient builders, master craftsmen, reduced to wandering shadows attempting in vain to create something, anything, in a barren land where creation is nearly impossible. As years in the End correspond differently to time in the overworld, one could say it's as if time stands still in that void. The next time the portal opened from the overworld, the dragon and its realm were much the same as when the ancients left it. To the dragon, perhaps, it was as if only a short span had passed, though in the overworld those events had faded into legend. It's remarkable how the legends persisted in fragments. Across distant villages, one could find pieces of the story, refracted in different cultures. For instance, a tale of a great monster beyond the world that only a chosen one can slay, or myths about people who flew too close to the sun, meaning they reached too high and were punished by the gods turned into monsters. The word Ender itself vanished from common speech, but many languages retained a term for dragon, or for an underworld that might have had roots in this saga. So what does one make of the strongholds now? These structures, in present times, are frequented by adventurers seeking the final challenge of facing the Ender Dragon. They are dangerous but navigable if one is prepared. Many who delve into them do so with a sense of purpose but also respect. They are walking on sacred ground, in a sense. Some adventurers leave the stronghold as they found it after activating the portal. Others might dismantle parts of it for treasure or materials, but perhaps it is best to leave them mostly intact as a signpost for the future in case others need to find their way. It's humbling to stand in a stronghold's portal room and reflect on the entire journey, how an ancient people's earnest quest for knowledge led them here, how tragedy unfolded, and how in the end it fell to ordinary folk to finish what was begun. It suggests a great cycle of beginnings and endings. Now, as our narrative draws toward a close, imagine once more the quiet that settles in after the adventurer has left the stronghold for the end. The portal might remain open for a short while, or perhaps they closed it behind them by removing an eye as the ancients did, to prevent any curious Enderman from following. In that brief interim, the stronghold is alive again, lit by the portal's eerie glow and echoing with the sounds of footsteps and flickers of battle. But eventually it falls silent once more. Perhaps this time, a victorious hero will return through the portal, maybe with scrapes and bruises but bearing the trophy of a dragon's defeat. Or perhaps they never return, and the portal quietly deactivates after them. Either way, quietude returns. The stronghold continues its long vigil beneath the surface. We leave the strongholds as they are now, partly in ruins yet enduring, dangerous, yet fascinating, their halls still impatient. They remain one of the last testaments to a civilization that dared to dream beyond the confines of their world. The entire story of the strongholds is, in essence, a lullaby of ambition, hubris, courage, and sacrifice played out in stone and time. In the calm that now stretches through these empty corridors, one might feel a presence, not malevolent, not quite benevolent either, but watchful. Perhaps it's the collective memory of the ancients, residing in the very walls they built, grateful that their story is remembered and that their greatest mistakes and achievements have taught those who came after. As you drift to sleep, picture the stronghold settling back into its slumber. The last flicker of your torch fades out as you leave it in your mind's eye, and darkness reclaims the rooms. The faint glow of the lava casts a gentle, oscillating light and shadow like a heartbeat slowing down. A single silverfish emerges, realizes nothing is stirring, and slips back into its stone. All is once again at rest. The story of the strongholds, from their hopeful genesis to their tragic fall and eventual rediscovery, lives on in whispers and in the blocks themselves. It is a reminder that even in a world as blocky and playful as Minecraft, there are deep currents of narrative, of ancient ruins with secrets of the brave and foolish who came before, and of the endless cycle of exploring, learning, and growing. There is comfort in knowing that even after great calamity, life continued, and new chapters were written by those who inherited the world. Now the hour is late, and the fire has burned low. Let your mind ease, carrying with it the images of those quiet halls and gentle echoes. The strongholds will keep their silent watch beneath the earth as they always have, containing the dreams and the nightmares of a long-lost age. In sleep, perhaps you will walk those halls in peace, untroubled by monsters, running your fingers along cool stone and feeling only curiosity and wonder. And in dreams, maybe you'll converse with the ancient builders and assure them that their story was not in vain, that it brought wisdom to those who followed. In the end, the tale of the strongholds is both a caution and a comfort. It tells us that great things can be achieved and lost, but also found and understood, that even when a stronghold falls to silence, the knowledge within can one day illuminate the world again. So rest now and let the quiet mystery of the strongholds lull your mind. The adventure through their entire story has been long and winding, gentle and eerie, but now we have reached its conclusion. The final door closes softly. The ancient secret is safe for tonight, and you can drift off knowing that in this world of endless possibility, morning will come. And with it, new stories to write upon the ruins of the old.